The biggest learning is saying no to the pressure of having to scale very fast. That whole year was a baptism by fire.
Okay, do you want to underestimate me? Well, be my guest.
Taking that risk and having kind of that courageous Latina-ness. I don't know how to explain it. I'm like, I just go. When a woman starts a business, it affects like a whole community.
This is Create What Matters.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to one more episode of Create What Matters. We're very thrilled to have you one more time for our Impact Beyond Profit episode and chapter. And here I am with my co-host, Letty. How are you, Letty? How are you doing today?
Great. Let's begin.
Today we have an amazing guest, Hilda Perez, who is a powerhouse at the intersection of community, culture, and conscious entrepreneurship. Hilda is a proud Dominican-American and first-generation Latina. She's part of the mere 4% of Latinas in the U.S. who holds a graduate degree. Hers especially is in social entrepreneurship, no less, and her impact is all of what we want to hear about today. She's not only the co-founder of Savvy Marketing for Good, a mission-driven agency amplifying purpose-led brands through ethical storytelling and cultural fluency, but she's also the COO of Salud, a legacy natural medicine company rooted in wellness, ancestral wisdom, and community impact. And Salud is very close to my heart as I've been given the opportunity to work alongside Hilda for, oh my God, how many years now? I think I lost the count. But it's such an honor to introduce Hilda, whether she's building brands that matter or reimagining food equity, which is one of her missions that she's going to be talking about today, or exploring cultural storytelling. Her journey is a masterclass in values-led leadership. And that is what we're all about here as well. So please welcome to Create What Matters, Hilda Perez. Welcome, Hil.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's always awkward when someone reads your bio.
It is.
I'm like, I did do that.
I did all of that. Well, it's amazing because you can also have the experience to then look back and say, oh my God, have I done all of this?
Mm-hmm.
To stop and acknowledge. So it's an honor to have you and to welcome you into this conversation and to be able to explore a lot of those things that you have been doing throughout so many years. I think I've always said this to you and I've said this to our friends. To me, you're a total girl crush and inspiration based on just the fact that you're doing and have been doing so many incredible things that I want to share today with our community. And so Letty can ask you and learn about this as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I'm going to pass it on to Letty. Let's
Sure.
begin with her.
I want to understand, what does it mean to you to blend your heritage, where you come from, with being in the country that talks so much about entrepreneurship, hustle way of living in a way or another, and building community? I know that the Latina community is very big there. And if you have to introduce yourself like at a dinner party to people you don't know, how do you do that?
You know what's funny? I kind of always, I don't know. I always say I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm a business owner, and I'm a proud aunt. I'm really proud of having my two wonderful nephews. So a combination of that for sure. But I think social entrepreneur is the first thing that I lead with. And then they always ask, like, well, what does that mean? What do you do? And I tell them I run a legacy business that focuses on helping other people by creating vitamins and supplements, proprietary blends, and nutritional wellness consultations for the community, particularly the Latino community that's very large here in the United States. What else would I say? I think that's the gist of it more than anything. And your question about how I combine kind of like my upbringing in that, I think just by being Dominicana and just being Latina, we're so community focused. And I know definitely in my culture, being part of a family, the multi-generational household and healing is so ingrained into our culture. It was almost second nature to make community part of how we built our company and how I lead my life. And my dad is one of 9 children. My grandmother was a pastor who had community of over 600 plus followers and creating all of these churches in the Dominican Republic. So it's very part of who I am and just generationally, for sure.
What would you say is the main difference between being an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur, if someone had to put the differences or in buckets? I know that it's more fluid than that, but
I think it's just thinking further than just the profit, right? So it's creating what kind of impact and what decisions you're going to make in your day-to-day as an entrepreneur are going to create that positive impact. I'm always thinking about, okay, if we're going to create this new product, is it going to impact not only our bottom line, but how is it really going to help our clients? and their health? Is it going to create a bigger issue in the environment? Is it an herb that we can actually source, as successfully as possible to the point that we can control our supply chain? Having those kind of questions in your strategic decision making is what I think makes the difference for sure.
And Hil, what made you, out of these, all of the possibilities and the interests and the passions you pursue, I know community is a very strong element in your life. What made you pursue the social aspect of entrepreneurship and pursuing social entrepreneurship as a path for, as a common thread for a lot of, for everything you do? Why? What is the why behind this?
What is my why? We're always
What is the why behind this?
It's different on every day. I'm a woman. I go through a lot of things. Joking around. But the main why is it just makes sense to me. Going back to seeing how my father started the company over 30 years ago, seeing how community members would come in and ask for the product, but also speak to him because he's a general practitioner by trade, a nutritionist, and would see clients giving them advice and really seeing the impact that he had. We would host health fairs and there'd be lines around the block just wanting to speak to him. I saw that from a very young age, and I think that was really impactful, and it just made a lot of sense. My mom on the other side she was a homemaker and also helped build the business, of course, but she would always take we have a joke in the Dominican community, is like we sent cajas back to DR, and if your clothes ended up in a caja, it's gone. It's gone to the primos, it's gone to the tias, you'll see your cousin wearing your brand new blouse at Christmas time, and you had no idea, but it's all about they have less than, which was the belief system back then, because now that country is definitely booming. Mm-hmm. So we have to give back. It was a normal process of giving back, of sending money to support extended family members. And I think all of that was the seed that kind of led into, okay, I can start doing more things. So in high school, I did a lot of volunteer work. In college, I studied international relations and political science, working in nonprofits, kind of big ones like Make-A-Wish, Pencils of Promise, and seeing that I think that's the route I would take. But I was blessed to work with a professor who introduced me to social entrepreneurship because it blew my mind. I did a speech in Washington, D.C. at a women's conference that I was preparing for as a student. And he said, there's this company in Africa, and they created basically Venmo before Venmo was a thing, and trading. And that's how they fixed their issues in their banking system in this African country. I'm forgetting where it was, but that blew my mind. I'm they're creating themselves, these tools to help their financial situation. And this company is becoming extremely profitable because it created this technology. So seeing that you can be profitable for yourself, have a good quality of life while also making an impact was mind-blowing. And from then on, it kind of just continued. Yeah.
Amazing.
And being another generation, your father started this, so you come in as a second generation working in the family. What do you think you brought to the table that was different? And what are the views that changed in your perspective?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question because it was definitely a mom and pop shop. We had a storefront. Mm-hmm. Everyone in the neighborhood knew who we were. Very kind of that. I have images of me being 12 years old and not being able to see over the
counter,
sell the products. It's not child labor, I swear. I kind of was and I wanted to. My dad would pay me a little funding for the summer, but it was one of those things that it was very communal in that sense. And when my sister and I came in, because she's the CEO, she brought a lot more medical expertise that's renovated. She studied a science degree. Now she's a registered dietitian working in the healthcare system in the United States, really understanding it more. And I really believe I bring back the entrepreneurial and business side because I got to go to get my master's and study, which full circle, right? This company paid for that degree. So it makes a lot of sense to bring that same knowledge and seeing we have social enterprise right in your hands. Instead of starting something from scratch, how can we build on this for sure?
Nice. And what would you say is the heartbeat of Salud? Now that you've explained the story, how it was a mom and pop shop, but it has grown. It has a story of 30 years, expanding its impact to communities beyond New York City, where it was originated from. What is the heartbeat behind it, and has it changed over time? I know because I work with Salud a lot, I'm more close to it, but I would love for you to share what was the heartbeat at the beginning, and how do you see it changing, and if you see it changing in some way or another.
I think it continues to remain just our family focus. We're really focused on family, not just our own, but the employees that we hire. We're really focused on creating as much of employee satisfaction as possible, even though we're a small business. everything honestly comes down to the customer and comes down to the client. How can we create a better experience, a better product, offer more services, partner with better people so that way they can get the health needs that they need. Unfortunately, here in the United States, the healthcare system is not top tier as it could be unless you have a certain amount of funds. So we try to kind of fill the gap between the traditional medicine, which would be like the supplementation and the food medicine, food as healing, with the more conventional going to the doctor, hospital, because that's also important too. Everything has its own place. But we try to treat every client really as a human and really as a community member of as much as we can. And I think that's really has given us the fire, the fuel to be around for almost 35 years and still going with everything we've been through, which like the store burned down once, there was a pandemic, we didn't have products for a year, like it's been insane. So luckily we're still going, and that's kind of what, and I do it for the people and for my employees for sure.
The store burned down?
The store burned down once. I don't remember the year it was, but yeah, it burned down. That happened and we lost everything, but then we got to rebuild in a new location. Must have been the late 90s, early 2000s, been a long time.
Yeah, I know the story of Salud. It's there. You've been through a lot, and I do want you to tell a few of these things that the company has gone through and the team has gone through. But if you were to say what is the purpose in the company and why Salud is beyond the business, beyond the client, because I know you're doing many very interesting things and projects, and that the vision for what impact is at Salud is quite unique. So if you were to define that purpose from the perspective of what you have been doing, because there's been a lot of work there and a lot of focus there, but from the vision as well, what could you say? What would make Salud more than a business? And what is the impact that you want to continue to create?
When I think about what differentiates us, and it is the community piece of trying to be really well versed in our customer, like my sales team know clients on a very personal level. They'll call them up, be like, your diabetes medication is running out, but how's your diabetes? How's your mom's diabetes? Like they speak to them in such a way that I think is very unique compared to, and I'm going to compare it now because other vitamins and supplement companies, right, that are more for profit, they probably have a social impact leg, which is amazing, but I haven't seen that specific really personal touch. And I think with the kind of the technology boom that we're going into with AI and everything, it can get a little lost. So I'm trying to keep that. And I think that's the purpose because, and I was just reading this today, that's so funny. I really believe that when we're in community, everyone heals. We heal ourselves, we heal the people around us, and we start creating larger impact. And it all starts with your own personal health. And once you have that health and we can strengthen the whole family system, it just continues to ripple effect around. And we do that when we focus on what partners we're going to work with and so on and so forth. But that is really the main purpose of the company, because further down the line, I just internally see a big issue with a lot of isolation, right? There's a lot of isolation. There's so many products out now. There's so many services. Think about when you go to the supermarket, you can find like, at least in the States, you can find like 50 brands of cereal. It's too much. There's too much. I get really overwhelmed. I don't love food, even though I love food. But how can you like offer that personal touch and also create an impact is what I think is going to make the businesses stronger in the future. And it's going to be what people are craving for, because now that's how I see that they're wanting to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that I can call out, because Salud is so close to my heart, and I think a point of difference is that you capture and protect the roots, people's origins, especially Latinos who come from many different stories and backgrounds and countries and food and cultural nuances. All of that is something that I really have seen in your work to protect and capture. Even if you are second generation or first generation Latino, the way that your products are brought and the story is told is through protecting those roots and to connecting back to our food, to our origins, or to what La Abuela used to do to when you felt sick to your stomach. So I think that is something that is very unique. Obviously, it's a very marketable type of thing that can be used a lot in marketing, but it's also very true in terms of the products that you're designing. And I think that is to me, a very, very nice part of your impact.
Thank you. Yeah, and we really try to make it a foothold because it's also what makes the most sense. And that's one of our biggest workshops, honestly. And the ask is, how do I continue eating my cultural foods while having to lose weight, controlling my diabetes, if I have a cancer diagnosis, all of those things, because a carb is a carb. That doesn't mean you have to, if you've never eaten quinoa, you're not going to get someone to eat quinoa. That's not part of your thing. I don't love it. I like it for its health benefits, but I don't love the flavor. But I'll eat a plátano any day because I'm Dominican. So I know how to do that and raise them. Like, and I love white rice and beans and like all of these different things. So it's a big part of showcasing to people and also safeguarding our cultural heritage, because a lot of, again, in the United States is being attacked a lot recently.
For sure.
So being a young woman and a young girl, like growing up and seeing your family do all of this, when was the moment? Because sometimes, for example, when I was working on things and I would see, one day I saw my boss for the first time present the work that I did. And I was like, holy shit, I'm actually very nice. I'm very good at what I do. Like, this is awesome. And because when you see someone else presenting your work, you're like, oh, okay, I see the value of this now. Now I understand it, because it's hard sometimes to see the value for yourself. Do you have that same aha moment of like, holy shit, my family is awesome and we did something amazing? Do you have any memories of it?
I do. There are several that come to mind. When I was young, younger, I think I must have been in like about to graduate college or something, and I was visiting our storefront that we had, and I remember much elderly woman came in and she recognized me, and she's like, oh my God, you've gotten so big. And I'm like, who are you, lady? Like, I have no idea. What are you talking about? Like, I've been coming here for years. I knew you when you were like 4 years old. So it's having a customer who's been with us for that long, and she used to carry around pictures of what her arthritic hands used to look like and how our supplement has helped her hands like have mobility again. And that was such an impactful, somewhat awkward. I'm like, I don't know you. That used to happen often to me, that people would recognize me because my father, like, we'd go to events with him or anything like that. But they were just so grateful. They were so grateful for the products and how they have helped. And the fact that they'd been around for decades of my life is really insane. And the same way with having, employees who I'm younger than, but have been with us for 20 years and still wanting to work on the company is really wonderful. And I think a big switch also changed. My family's amazing. We're doing a lot of work, right? But I think having my father kind of pass the reins a little bit in the business sense was a big deal to me. I remember we were in negotiations we have a television show on Telemicro that my father does 3 times a week. Before that, we were on another show, another television channel that we were negotiating for. And I just remember I was in a room, and I don't know if you could relate to this as women, mucho macho, Latino, super hombre, like they were talking all suited up, all of these things. They're like, we talk about this. This is man's talk situation, but I'm in the room because I'm the one making the decisions of who I'm going to pay.
Yeah.
And I'm just there. And I remember being really anxious about it. It was the first time when I started really stepping into the company. And my dad sat there very calmly in his seat, listening to what they had to say. This is the proposal. And then he just, without saying a word, looked at me. He's like, what do you think? And I was like, I think it's expensive. Like, this is too much, and this is why, blah, blah, blah. And then the other guys didn't even look at me, mind you. The majority of the time, we were looking at him, directing him. And they're like, well, this is the way. He's like, and he looked at me and he's like, you heard what she said. She's the boss now. So that whole shift of them
I got
literally, like, it was insane. Literally, like, turning to me, and then I'm like, pull out all your business stuff you learned. How do you say it? But then also translate it into Spanish, because now you're going to have to really have this challenge.
Wow, yeah.
About our contract, and just having Kim kind of be like, this is like, you're the one making the decisions, was a big eye-opening moment for me personally of, wow, my family.
How old were you when this happened?
I was not that old. Not that young. Excuse me. I think I'm very young, apparently. I must have been when this was started in 2017, so I was 28.
No, but it's young to be making decisions this big if you think about it. Not everyone has the opportunity of making
That's true,
decisions of this. I imagine a huge amount of money and a huge amount of like opportunity for you. So yeah, I think it's very big. Oh, that's
and then the trust and your father passing the torch to you and say, okay, cool. I've prepared you, here you go, and I trust you. I think that is a big thing. And something that I was
agree for a reason.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that I think that seems like a very key moment into stepping and to also creating the company and leading the company through this new lens, also as a woman, right? As a woman in the world and how everything is changing now. And on that note, I wanted to ask you, what is something that has worked for you and your sister at Salud that shouldn't work on paper? Because I think sometimes when we're talking about entrepreneurship, there are like this set of rules of things that you kind of like have to follow. And sometimes I think like, you know, the rules are there to be broken as well. And not everything is a script and everything is so changing and unpredictable. So what is something that you've seen that, you know, shouldn't work on paper, but has worked for you at Salud?
That's a good question. Things that come up quickly are being told that my team wasn't capable and wasn't able to learn because they're older, right? And they're not English speaking first. And I'm like, they're not idiots. They all studied. They just studied in their home countries. They came here, started a new life. They're willing to work.
Sometimes studied more, depending on where you're from.
Sometimes studied more. I'm like, my general manager has a business degree. Like, it's got it in Colombia. Like, it doesn't diminish her knowledge and her expertise and her strength to the company. But I made a really concerted effort because I was told so many times, you know, hire better talent, hire this, you're not going to grow in the pace. I'm like, I might not grow in the pace. Honestly, I couldn't afford it. It was too expensive to do it. And they were willing to learn. And if I can upskill my team, so the dream is that they stay with me. If they need to go somewhere else, I'd rather them go somewhere else with the skills already so that they're prepared to go. So I'm a big proponent of professional development, of bringing them the information in the language that they can understand and finding those resources, which was impossible almost, because it's now that it's cool to be Latino. Bad Bunny did a lot, but it wasn't cool 10 years ago. There was no resources. I remember sitting there translating documents because they needed to understand what was happening. And then that's a whole other tangent I could go on, but that was a big one for me of being told that we couldn't do it just because we didn't have the top tech minds. It wasn't a tech product. The space is so saturated for vitamins and supplements. I'm like, yeah, we can cut corners and have a cheaper product so I can market it more, but then the product's not going to work. And it's been working for 35 years, the formula. So I'm not going to do that. So I think the biggest learning is saying no to the pressure of having to scale very fast. I've seen it with my counterparts in the industry that many have already gone bankrupt. They had really pretty marketing, horrible supplementation, which honestly boggles me because this is something that you're giving to someone to help them with their health and can severely hurt their system. So again, another soapbox I won't get onto, but I think understanding what to say no to just in the essence of having to scale is something that I
like a scaling for the sake of scaling, just because
scaling for the sake of scaling, because they're like, yeah, you can go buy this, you could do this. And we had so many business advisors, so many people who say in a really traditional way, I'm like, well, that doesn't work for us, right? I need to find a solution because the majority of my customers want phone calls. So now what everybody's on web. I'm like, that's great. Yes, I will have a website, but I still need to have a team that's going to call these people. But the payroll taxes are insane. So it's like, how do you manage all of this has been a fun challenge. And I think once I finally learned that, and I think I learned it after building my last company, it's like, I'm not in a rush. If we're still here, everybody is as covered as possible and we're going to grow. I'd rather be a long haul growing company than an overnight success any day.
And what's the difference between you and your sister? Like age wise?
She's shorter. Oh. I'm younger. She's the eldest. She's like 3.5 years older than me. I'm 36.
Nice. How is it working with your sister?
I love it. Honestly, we're really compatible. I think years of having our own expertise, and she's really passionate about the science part and everything. I really love the business part, but we both kind of coalesce really well, and we are really good at setting boundaries between being family and sisters versus being co-workers and co-owners. So I've been very blessed that we get along really well.
And you've created stuff together, right? They had a podcast, they have other businesses. So I think the relationship is quite inspirational in terms of your dynamics, because you have your nephews and you take care of them as well. So there's like a very nice blend into, also it amazes me the amount of things you do and you create with her. And, you know, the family root is also very strong, as you are very rooted in your family and your community. And I think this is maybe this is a part of around building a legacy business. You know, you're building from this root, from this community. You're also hiring people from the community. The people at Salud are women, most of them, and they're part of the community. They're from diverse backgrounds. I'm in love with all of them, like especially the marketing team. Hello, Sarah and Suli, and all of them. Often when we think about running a legacy business, it sounds stable, right? We're talking about a company in this case that is, 30 years in the making, and the wellness space and the nutrition space, it's obviously a market that is becoming so big, and it's a need that will not change, that it's only becoming more prevalent. But at the same time, there's more competition, lots of things are changing. So, and you have to take risks and take chances. So when it comes to that, what would you say was one business decision that you took that you would say, okay, I took a chance there? That was like a big leap of faith or risk that I took to get to a different level.
Yeah, I think just becoming fully digital, fully remote was one of the largest things we had. We had a storefront for a while. We closed the storefront down and transitioned to be digital first.
Mm-hmm.
Still have a location where my father sees clients and things like that, but the actual storefront doesn't exist yet. That's down the line. I hope that it can be part of what we're going to build in the future, because we had to, again, retrain. We had to retrain my whole team. We had to retrain the clients. Be like, oh, I can't just go pick it up. Be like, no, we're going to send it directly to you. There's going to be this. It takes a lot of kind of managing in that sense. And in that same vein, anytime we've rebranded, we always had to do a big push, especially in marketing. Like, it's the same product, it's just in a better bottle, it's better presentation, all of these things. But I think the digital first and trying to really embrace technology has been the biggest change we've made in the past 35 years for sure.
And how long does it take usually for a community that's sometimes so attached also to certain things? Because I know that even especially older communities and Latino communities are very attached to the face-to-face, to the touching people, to seeing people. So how long did that transition take, and what were the challenges that you had in that process?
The biggest challenge was just complaints. Honestly, people would complain of like, why? No, and you just listen to their complaints. A lot of managing the customer service. It's like, quejado mucho. So it's like, but the turnaround, maybe 3 to 6 months max, because once they got their product and they started consuming it again, they would see it was the same thing, and then it was a quicker service that it was easy to get that into. I think the biggest challenge was training my team to be set up remotely. They were so used to, specifically the sales team, they were so used to like being kind of like similar, like a tiny call center, but all together, you know, having that bonding time, talking about it, cafecito en la mañana, like all of these things, which I still would love to have at some point in that way. Right now, it isn't the case, but they still created ways that they still bond. So we make sure that they also have, like, if it's somebody's birthday, we always have a cake in the little team that is in office, or make sure that we send something to them, trying to keep that company culture still alive so they don't feel like it's completely dissolved. That was the largest thing. But the pandemic, that was kind of a blessing, because we were forced to. We were forced to shut down, so we had to be forced to switch online, and that's where the big digital transformation for the company began.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about hard decisions and different and things that are complicated for us. I know that we only usually talk about the good things, but what were also like mistakes that you made that you look back and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this? Or even like, was there any moment that you thought of like, I don't want this anymore, please take this away from me, I just want to curl up in a small space and just like forget about life?
Often.
But I think Thank you for saying that, because I thought of that yesterday. Yes.
Depends on the day. Like, I'll start off fine. I'm like, existential crisis. Then I'll work out and I'm like, all right, we're fine. Like, it's always something. As a business owner, I think it's just part of it, especially when you're a socially focused business owner too, because you're sitting here, you can think about all the things that can go wrong. And if you're not helping the people the right way, that like legalities, all of these things, right? So it is something that happens often. The bad thing, like having the wrong partners, and you know, Ale kind of was part of that situation, having a partner that just didn't work out, and it set us back in ways. It costs a lot of money, not using the money in the right way, even though you're thinking you're making the right decision. So I'm the one here, like, was I not involved enough? What do I need to know? But I didn't know enough. Who didn't I bring in? You question your decision making a lot, because again, it's not just affecting me. If I was just me and I didn't have employees, I have people I have to like talk to the next day and say, like, why isn't this working out? Why is it taking so long? Why is this? And I always look for solutions for these things. But I think I've learned to do more vetting. I've learned how to manage. I've learned who to kind of spot that's going to be a right partner for us. And I think those bad times always lead to just experience, right? It leads to the wisdom that you need to be a better entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's definitely been times. I remember very clearly, I had just started working in the company. My sister basically said, I'm going to go because I'm going to have my second child. this is yours. Take over. You're back from your master's. I'm like, cool. That whole year was a baptism by fire. I was never
Baptism by fire. I love that.
I was never calm. Everything that
I love
could
that, but it's so
go wrong. It sounds healing like a phoenix, but also while you're in it, I'm like, this hurts. Let's take a break.
exactly.
And having people come in, and I wasn't used to how they worked, and really trying to figure out the kinks of how to run the company. And then our main laboratory that we were working with, basically did not want to partner with us to do a pilot project with a major national pharmacy in New York. We had an opportunity to get into these pilot programs to put our product on shelves that would have skyrocketed our company, hopefully. And the lab didn't want to give us an insurance that we needed because they had to kind of co-sign on an insurance, which we're like, that's a little suspicious. But we looked for another lab that we're now working with and have been wonderful for all this time. And they said, yeah, we'll make the product. Here's the insurance. This former gentleman got very upset. He got very upset to the point that he decided he was no longer making any of our products. Oh, wow. So overnight, my opportunity to be in a major national retailer was gone. And I no longer had any product or backstock to sell to anybody because we try not to keep inventory because that's really costly. I try to just purchase as I go, and it's more sustainable. I'm not having just backstock just sitting there. So I remember going to the stall, finding this out, crying my eyes out, kind of coming back. And then the beauty of it is the team that we built, and they've been with us for so long, are so quick and either solution oriented, and they're so understanding. And I think because of the leadership, how we have it, we're extremely transparent. If something goes wrong, I want to tell you with time. I will try everything in my power to fix it. But if I know that I can't fix it for you right now, this is the situation. Now, how do we move forward? Because I bring them in on the decision making. I'm like, what do we do? How do we do this? And we had no product, and people were buying on back order for almost 8 months. Oh, wow. With the hope that they will create product. Because once we got the other lab, they're like, we'll make your whole suite of products, but it takes some time with vetting. You have to get it tested, all of the proper channels. It took months. And I had no product, and somehow I was still making sales. And those are the moments where, going back kind of to the beginning of the conversation, is we built the community. They trusted us. They knew that our product worked. They knew that we were good on our word as a company, that we were going to send them the product once we had it. And they were still supporting us. And that was amazing. Even when I had to furlough some employees at the time because I couldn't make the payroll if the money wasn't coming in, they were like, well, wait. And they waited. They didn't wait 8 months because I eventually got that solution because nobody can. But we were open to doing that. And I think that was one of the hardest things that we went through, aside from the pandemic, because that's a whole other situation. But I think that was, again, in my baptism by fire and intro, I'm like, oh, this company has something. And it's not just the product, right? It's not the impact that we're having around people, because if you're willing to wait, who waits for anything in an Amazon Prime life?
No one.
Nobody. So it's something that I want to keep as we grow.
I think something that I might add here as I hear you speak about this, and in my experience, I think Salud is a very resilient company from the inside out. I think there are a lot of moments, and we could do a whole podcast around that, of things that have happened at Salud throughout the years. The fire, COVID, the tariffs as of late, potentially harming tech partners that were supposed to help us and eventually did not do that or did the opposite. So so many things have happened inside and out. And I think something that I'm reflecting and based on what you're sharing is that you have a very resilient team that adapts a lot to whatever is happening. And especially, I think a small business in any industry is very fragile. And navigating those waves is very, very tough. And I think I recognize that resilience a lot in your team and the ways you've been managing all of the things coming at you, which sometimes have been these perfect storms where you don't know, what are you going to do now? Especially in COVID, I remember, if you're going to share that story where you actually won a prize with Green Central and everything, where your team and you were blocked from selling product in New York City because it was not one of the priorities of products to be manufactured, right? So those types of stories made me think of how much from the inside out, the company and the people are very resilient in pushing through all of the challenges that had been coming at you.
For sure. Yeah. COVID was COVID. I think we all struggled for sure. But from us, we had to transition everything. I remember packaging after I was living with my sister at the time here in South Florida, packaging stuff in her living room because the lab had to send it there because our shipping department couldn't be open in New York. we couldn't safely social distance. And I was exhausted. It was one of the craziest times. And just having clients call us, be like, are we going to die? Like, they're trying to ask us, like, what does this mean? What does it look like? How do we take care of ourselves in this time? There's a lot of therapy happening, a little bit unintentional, not professional. Just, it's going to be okay. We're going to send you your product. Use this remedy if you're feeling sick, all of that. So it was very trying. But I think, again, it was a baptism by fire situation of, it did build that resilience. My team was still stayed on. I did have to get rid of a couple of people, but that was by their own volition. They wanted to leave. That's okay. We got the company still running. And then at that same time, though, it was it's kind of like the unique blend of seeing where opportunity could be, because that's where my sister decided to go follow her degree and registered dietitian so that we can then grow the company in a different way. I think all of those really hard moments that do build resilience just are the stepping stones to success, for sure. It's what really kind of gives you that thick skin for when there's that perfect storm of situation. That, and also my Christian faith, and I pray a lot, is what keeps me going. And, I like to kickbox. I work out. I punch things because it gets really hard. I have my girlfriends. We talk it out, all of these things. So having that set up was
Letty
important.
lifts heavy weights, so you can.
I do too,
you're
bro.
similar in that
I am a gym rat, yes.
Sometimes I do some RDLs and just get the anger out.
Exactly.
Because
I'm going to make my muscles suffer for all of the mental suffering that I
Exactly. It's a nice trade-off, but it builds the resiliency. It's a nice kind of metaphor to how working out, and it builds your resiliency as an entrepreneur, and how I want this company to be around for my whole life, which would be wonderful, but I also want to do other ventures too. So knowing that, and I want to help other, specifically women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of color, to thrive and kind of learn from my mistakes. So my always big thing, I was like, did you get your insurances? Did you have this? Like, I try to get really practical advice, because it could be really scary when you're doing it alone. And that again, we survived all of this because we built a community. It's the only way. It's the only way that I think we could have made and are continuing to grow a success.
It's a kind of like a golden ticket if you think about it, like having a family and a support net that you have at home, like to help you go through the things that you need to, and know what takes time, and also rely a lot on experience, but at the same time have built legacy and a community that you're able to communicate and open up so much about the business. I think that is definitely, I would say that that this is like one of the biggest things that you need as a company, is to try to have those clients that are so loyal in a way to you.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to know from your perspective, like because when we talk about impact beyond profit, I think that people, and being a socially conscious business, I think that a lot of people believe that we're talking about NGOs, and that's not the case. You are for profit, right? What are some of the misconceptions maybe, and what are the values that you carry besides community and having resources, as you were talking about, that are maybe clean or they're somehow connected to your roots? Like, what are the things that you still value, and what are the things that people get wrong about being socially conscious?
I think one of the largest misconceptions, and with rightfully so, is that there's a lot of like greenwashing, pinkwashing, all of the marketing tactics that people are using, because at least in the past decade, being a social enterprise or social impactful company has become really popular.
Just like Latinas, and then combine the two now, and then you have like...
Exactly. It's almost like you're like the token company, or we're going to... It's very superficial, super level. And I mean, I saw this a lot even during the COVID pandemic, everything with the protesting here for Black Lives Matter. A lot of companies like, we support this, and then they've gone in the wind. And I understand, like, even I may have done some superficial things thinking I was making an impact, and I wasn't. I had to get more educated. Our company, though, and I give this advice to anybody who wants to be a social impactful company, is while you're building, find the one thing that's part to your value and ingrain that in the company that you're building. So, for example, even with this podcast, it could be impactful because you're bringing in the people that you know are going to help your audience the most, that's going to give them the resources that they need, and then following through with that in some way. Yeah. Our business, we're big on food equity and making sure that nutritional, high quality food is accessible to many communities. Right now, we're in a smaller stage of that. My dream would be nationwide, and how we can support them. We support a food justice council in New York that's doing various things through their work. And we do that by that one just purely financial also. They sometimes want some advice, but we're like, we trust the work that you're doing. You're doing the nutritional courses that we think align with our company. Here's the fiscal part of it, this fiscal sponsorship for the company. Here in Miami, we're partnering with another organization called Health in the Hood, where we lead workshops in an urban garden in a very impoverished part of Miami, where people come in and they harvest the food that they have accessible, because that organization is what they do is they grow food and they distribute food in Miami to people who don't have access to it. And my sister goes in with another dietitian that we're working with and teaches them how to create a meal out of a budget from like the dollar store. So dollar store canned foods, how to create a whole balanced meal with something that you can afford, and also with the food that we're getting from the garden. Because we don't believe, and that's something that I'm very passionate about, and that could be because I'm also Latina. I grew up around food.
Yeah.
There's food at every activity.
And good food.
Sunday, yeah, like amazing food. If it was somebody's birthday, it was this, or it was just a random Tuesday, there was always food on the table. And it shocks me that at least in our country, that's not the case, right? And I know in many countries as well, by circumstance, a lot of refugees might not get access to food, immigrants, all of these things. And it just doesn't make sense to me. So as a company, it aligns really closely with the nutritional work that we're already doing, because it is a passion that we have. And I think once you kind of have that similar approach, depending on whatever business that you're doing, and doing it in a really authentic way, that's where you could see the biggest impact. And I think your client also sees that impact. That's different from the greenwashing of like, they're just saying they're doing this, but you've never seen the child in Africa that they helped.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's a problem. You don't really know. It's very like loose, and they might have this cover of, we have our nonprofit leg and this is the good that we're doing, but at the same time we're also dumping chemical waste into the ocean, and we're causing cancer in our communities.
Yeah, they do it to pay their sins. It's a way of
or tax write-offs. Honestly,
exactly.
It's just fine. So I think my process with that is, and I tell this to a lot of people, I'm like, I want you to make money, but while you're making money, just make a positive impact, and then you could rub it in other people's faces and it feels great.
I love it. When we talk about food equity, because I think it differs a lot from different countries. Like for me, it was a shock. So quick story, I used to watch TV, and because I learned English from a young age, I wanted to watch English speaking shows so I could practice. Everyone has learned their English through friends. I have learned some of my English through Nigella, which was I don't know if you remember this, but she was an English cook.
Yes,
and
a British show. Yes,
a British show, yeah. And she has a whole story about it, but like she has abusive story, cocaine, a lot of stuff. But let's leave that to the side. The thing is, I tried to replicate sometimes her food, and the amount of sugar she would put into things did not make any sense to me, because the sugar that we have in Brazil is from cane sugar, so it's very, very sweet.
Yeah.
So when I went to Canada for the first time, I put sugar in my tea, and I was like, this is not sugary enough. And then I learned that sugar comes from different places, and then you can actually have sugar from potatoes, any other type of these are not necessarily vegetables, but yeah, anyway. And so for me, it was a huge shock. And then I started learning more about where food comes from and the type of food that's distributed. For example, in the US, lots of corn, lots of processed food as well. So I didn't know that the amount and the variety of foods that I had access to, some other places didn't have access to, because I grew in a place that, even though we were not as rich maybe as some of the other countries, we still have a lot of fruits. We have fruits, all types of fruits, all around the year. It's not an issue.
All the time.
We have all the time vegetables, and we have a variety of it that's just nutritional. An everyday meal in Brazil is rice, beans, a protein, and salad. That's an everyday meal for us.
Yeah.
So what was that change for you, and what is that shift when you compare the Latino community and when you compare what you have in the US? Because I know it's a huge issue, right? Having that contrast of what is offered versus what you know from home and what you know from your home country.
Absolutely. I think, absolutely. Also, Brazil is beautiful. And these are the South America, the countries that we all hail from.
And Ecuador too.
Ecuador too, that's what I'm saying. DR is so beautiful because we do have, and that's something I always like to push back, because they are seen, right, as poorer countries, neither here nor there. There's reasons, there's government, there's colonialism, there's racism, all of that falls into place. But you will always eat well, which is...
We're very rich in resources. And we're poorly managed, I think. I think that I would say...
It's a management thing, for sure.
It's a distribution issue. It's not a lack of resources issue, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But that falls into the equity conversation, right? Because it's the same thing here in the States. And I say that because you do have to take all those things into consideration. So using your story of like the sugar here is different. It's because we might not have access, but we're also exporting it from a whole other side of the planet. So by the time it gets to the nutritional quality is no longer the same. The local food production system in the United States has been completely almost annihilated, which is why these little small gardens are kind of popping up in urban farms. And now there's like a resurgence of it. Thanks to many really famous chefs actually who traveled to other countries and came back and saying this is the right way to do it, and they make it high end, and it kind of starts to trickle down because factory farming here is insane. It's very difficult when you need something that's so important for your livelihood, but it's the most bleached, horribly processed food, right?
Yeah.
I think I really noticed that also with my own diet because I grew up with both. I grew up with the standard American diet, which literally it's sad. It's called the sad diet because it's the worst type of diet. And then the Dominican diet where I would have pizza one night that was just my parents thought I liked it, so they buy it, or McDonald's one night, and then the other night I'd have arroz, habichuela, plátano, pollo guisado, like all the things with vegetables, all of these things. So I had a combination of both. And I never really thought about it until I got a couple of years ago when I went back to New York and started the working in the company full time. And I was looking for kind of like, where can we make a social impact? And recognizing that all of these communities that we're servicing, many of them don't have access to healthy food.
Yeah.
We're telling them, eat this for your diet to control your diabetes, but then they have no access to healthy food. And it still happens to us to this day. My sister, I remember the other day, she was sharing that a client had a nutritional consultation. She's like, I don't have food. Like, I don't have food. I don't know where to get food from. And she could have been like an immigrant that just got here. My sister printed out a list of food banks in her location so she can go get the food. And then from the food bank canned goods, how do we build a healthy diet and where can we supplement? So
that is just mind blowing to have, for these chains and food chains to just be around the corner every other block, and then to not have access to these markets that we have in Latin America, right? Where in every skin, in every corner, you have access to your veggies or to grown food. And to that point, I wanted to ask you about this program, a few of the programs with purpose that you are supporting. Especially, I'm very curious about one around Grow From Home, because I think the food aspect is very pivotal and very crucial, and is very much at the center of what you do, right? Nutrition heals you. Connecting with good nutrition and with equitable access to basic nutrients and varied food that is quality and unprocessed food is key, but also the community aspect of that. So I know there's a project called Grow From Home and Farm Share that you're very connected with. Could you share more about that one, and what is this project about, and how is it tying it all together, and all of this conversation around food equity and nutrition for good for people, essentially?
Absolutely. So the organization that we're a fiduciary sponsor for, the Washington Heights and Inwood Food Council based in New York, they started this incredible project called the Grow From Home program. They essentially they brought seedlings and they taught children and their parents how can they literally grow this potato, this lettuce in their windowsill or in New York, there's a lot of fire escapes. So right there, right? And it was just so cool to see the updates of them harvesting their little food, the kids getting really involved in it, because there's so much data backed by, if you get a child interested in how their food grows or how to just be involved in the food process, they're definitely going to try it, because you've heard kids like, broccoli, like I don't like it. But when they see it kind of being part of the process, they're more likely to try it and to eat it. And you already kind of set this intention in this child and this education so that when they go make food choices for themselves are just better, right? And they're craving it. And by impacting that, you're already impacting the nutrition of that whole household, because that whole household is now getting more nutrition density, which is then going to help them to get less brain fog, more focus, because there's now so much data attached to how additives affect people with ADHD and autism, and just even me. Like, I'll notice it. And if I have too much sugar in one day without even noticing it, if I'm not really being mindful of it, I'll feel horrible. It affects your system. So that's how we love to see impact come. And it's also like a fun way of doing it. That's the goal in the future when we open up our wellness centers, to have a whole urban farm where people can come and we can just source food for everybody, because it is so important. And it's the education piece. And this kind of goes back to, funny, how our resources are mismanaged. We have the resources, but once you train someone and you educate them, I'm like, did you know you have this resource? It's hard. You can't get rid of an education. Once you know, you know.
Yeah.
It's really to unlearn something. Then you have the choice. Do I want to partake in this? Do I not? And that is so powerful, especially when you're kind of pushed against a wall in a system that is built specifically to keep you down. Specifically, if you're a person of color, specifically if you're a woman, if you're a woman of a different or like different sexual orientation, there's this kind of my international relations political side coming out. It's a tactic. There's a reason why in these neighborhoods, all you find are 12 McDonald's and no food store.
Yeah.
There's a reason that the farmer's market is a luxury thing.
Yeah. And that it's normalized, you know, the fact that it's normalized, that is the standard, and that Whole Foods is mostly the place where it's become a luxury to eat well. And I think it's part of a system that needs to be broken. And in this sense, when it connects this to your definition as success in business, has that changed? You know, coming from a story and a life of community, of wanting to give back, to build a business that is thinking of customers, about your team, your people, your family, where people are at the center. Has that changed your definition of success in business somehow?
I think the only change is that I've become more bullish on it. And I think now that's kind of become I heard this recently, and it's like, if you were to pass away tomorrow, what are the things that you would want the people in your life to know you for? And I want to be known for that. I wanted to build community and I wanted to help other people. So I think it's a big part of it. Right? In the past, I used to be like, yeah, I want a yacht. That'd be great. I would love a private jet. I want to travel all the world. I want to do all of these things. Part of me still does, because I still love travel. It's a big part of it. But like, how can I do things sustainably? How can I grow the company in a way that helps other people as much as possible, while also creating the impact that I want to see in the world, right? Kind of like creating what matters to me is a big part of it. So that has been the biggest thing, is that I think I've gone even more head down on that, even though a lot of people are like, this isn't going to work. Your company is going to fail. I'm like, even if it does, I'd rather it fail with me like going out screaming and then that's it, than just quitting or selling to a company that I don't believe in and doesn't align with my values, because a lot of people do that too, because money is very tempting. It's very tempting to kind of see your growth in that skyrocket in some way. But if you're leaving people behind, if you're not going to really practice what you preach, then what's the point of even having the business? For this, I'll just go work for anybody else. Yeah. Although I don't know if I'm hireable because of my bullish beliefs.
I think where you're describing to me is a values-driven life, right? That just like it's embedded into everything you do, your business, the way you engage with your friends, the types of trips you do. I know you will never go to a all-inclusive hotel. You know, you're like, everything that you are is through your values. So a lot of what you're saying is you live in a values-driven life that is touching every aspect of your life.
So for sure. And thank you for pointing that out. But I do like all-inclusive hotels, but I choose more sustainable ones, because now, because of the market demand, more are existing. Ones that are going to be like, that's the beauty of what purpose-driven entrepreneurship and kind of this impact wave. It is, some things could be very superficial, but when you do dig down, a lot of companies are really starting to shift because the market is asking for it. Yeah. There's a reason all of these yoga retreats in Costa Rica and all of these things and vegan eating, and it's coming popular. But at the end of the day, some of it is making a positive impact. You can make a case for the negative externalities of like ecotourism for sure, but this wasn't a thing. The fact that I can choose that I wanted to stay in a place that is going to be better for the environment was never even a choice. The fact that we have more choice now as consumers is really wonderful.
Yeah, and absolutely. What would you say to people that are starting now and who would also want to go in that direction and use their voice, use their business, and use their degrees in a good way to becoming social entrepreneurs?
With any business, I truly believe just find either a problem you're really passionate about or a solution you're really passionate about. Because other than that, you're not going to want to stick with it. You're going to get burnt out. You're going to have a lot of people. You're always going to have people saying no to you in your face. And I say this also from my perspective as a Latina and a woman in the United States, there were so many times where like, who do you think you are to think that you can run a company, and like all of that forced. And I never felt like I had internal imposter syndrome. I felt it was forced upon me, and it
That's a
never
good
made
point.
sense to me. I'm like, I'm actually really capable. I know how to do this. I made it this far,
Yeah.
and I do it in 3 languages. So don't come at me, kind of like
Yeah.
So I encourage people to really step into their strengths, focus on the problem or solution you're passionate about, and make sure it's just genuinely and authentically aligned. And it doesn't have to be big. You don't need to solve world hunger. But if you want to solve hunger in your little town, that's great. How do you do that? And then you start bringing in, cross-sector partners like government and nonprofits, because even though it is a for-profit company, I think there's a lot to say to partnering with nonprofits. Our partners are nonprofits, the ones that are doing this grow from home and these different organizations, because they have capacity that we don't. We just want to support them because it's aligned to our mission and our values. And being as authentic in that possible, and not falling into you need to scale and get angel investment and VC funding and all of these things, which is great. If that's the case because you need to create your biomedical thing, amazing. But also align with people who are aligned in that, because I also tell people, be mindful of where you get venture funding from. Look at places like Patagonia has their own venture fund. They're an incredible company that's very social entrepreneurial. Last I checked was like $130 billion worth of revenue. And they have that money, they're funneling it down to support social enterprises and nonprofits that are focusing on environmental impact.
Yeah.
Look, the people are out there. Do your research and don't kind of settle. It's like dating.
That's good
Are you
advice.
still bootstrapped?
We haven't taken, the only outside
Oh,
funding
wow.
we have gotten government loans to help us during the pandemic,
Okay.
which have been really wonderful. But we don't have any external funding in that sense.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Amazing.
Thank you.
And I think another part of what I wanted to talk about is the part about identity and leadership and advocacy. You're part of the 4% of Latino women with a master's degree, but more importantly, you're part of the 25.6% of Hispanic women who own a business in the United States. And that's a number that is staggering because it's growing. And it's the second biggest demographic group in the US. And a lot of this change, especially around what business, in how business is growing, is a wave that is being pushed by women entrepreneurs. So I wanted to also, talking about impact, also brings the conversation around identity and around representation. And I know you support and are very aware of representing and about carrying this torch for other women. So what does this mean to you? What does representation mean to you as a Latina, as a woman leading this company, and not only this company, but creating a values-driven life? How do you want to inspire others who look up to you and who would be eager to pursue something related to impact in the future?
Yeah, it's something that's I didn't know about the 25% statistic, which is really cool to hear.
Yeah.
And it's something that in the future I would love to have my own fund so I can start funding into these different types of companies. I think I personally enjoy mentoring people. I enjoy consulting on different businesses. I get a lot of passion from it, helping them think about the problems, how they want to create an impact through their company. And that's how I just show up. I think just showing up with the knowledge that you have and not gatekeeping it. There's definitely times where, and I've heard this hasn't happened to me. I haven't had this is not my lived experience. I've had so many wonderful women be mentors to me throughout my whole career that it becomes natural. And I think it became part of it because they were so open with how they helped me grow in my career, to the point that I was able to get, opportunities like being on the board of my former university, being in that room, making decisions of a multi-million-dollar endowment, which I never thought I'd see myself doing, but taking that risk and having kind of that courageous Latina-ness. I don't know how to explain it. I'm like, I just go, I do. I feel like Latinas have this beautiful, and maybe it's a cultural thing. I'm like, at least definitely for Dominican women, like, you can't tell us we can't do anything.
Yeah, you just go. You just do it.
Because we're just going to do it. And we're probably going to do it before you ask us, and better, because we may not care of how you do it in the first place.
It might take longer, but I'm going to get there.
But I'm going to get there. And
yeah, I think it's
I'm gonna look fabulous while I'm doing it.
I think something that I think about as Latino women and women and immigrant women is like, okay, do you want to underestimate me? Well, be my guest.
Yeah.
inside
it.
is like, I know what I'm made of, as an immigrant and as a Latina woman, because we have dealt with many things growing up, like governments, things changing, uncertainty, so much change, so much pressure to fit in a certain box, like so many things coming at us. And I think that builds that grit and that resilience to, build businesses, to create podcasts, to also think of the other people and go beyond our nose. I think we also I think that is so beautiful around our values, that it's not only about growing a business for the sake of our own profit, but also about giving back and caring about our teams, our families, our communities, and about the rest.
I don't have the statistic here, but there's been there's a lot of data behind that as well, that when a woman starts a business, it affects like a whole community.
Yeah.
It's so ingrained in us. And I say this, even people with womanly tendencies, I don't know, like more nurturing tendencies is so normal. And it's because of just how we live in community. When you forgetting the name, but in certain cultures that they create like a fund that everybody in the whole community gives a little bit of money every week, and then the grandfather fell ill, so they pull from that fund so the whole community can help with the expenses. Like, that's an innovative way of doing banking, and it's all just within themselves. And those are kind of the stories that are really amazing to me. I definitely see it with Latina women. I see it with women-owned businesses. I think that's also why I'm so passionate about it, because it's been reciprocal. It just makes sense. It's hard to say it because it's so ingrained in me to do that kind of work, and I hope that it encourages other people to do the same and support each other as business owners and as entrepreneurs, because competition is healthy, but collaboration is what makes everything work on the planet. To the ant in the Amazon, to the CEO in the boardroom, like, it's the only way.
Absolutely.
And being a second generation, can you talk about the next generation? What is it that you have been seeing on them that you are like hopeful or even worried about? Because I know we also worry a lot, right?
We'll start with the negative. My worry is that they're stepping into a space of where there can be such extreme isolation and fake connection. And that can come through social media. That could come through comparison of, I'll never look that pretty. This woman has a bunch of filters on. I'll never look that good in that business. This person is renting the private jet to make this TikTok. All of these different things that it's just smoke and mirrors, and they may not be able to tell the truth, right? It's up to us to guide people and be like, that's not real. Like, it can look good, but that's not real. Don't trust everything that's out there, because it's not real. People are doing it so that they can get money. They can do this. They can do many things to fool you, right? On the other hand of that, which then, can lead to more isolation, which creates division, as you can see in communities and government. There's a reason. It's all a tactic, and we need to be smarter than that tactic and kind of not fall for it. The positive is that I do think we have, at least in the United States, again, the generation that's coming beneath us is becoming more aware. And I don't know if it's just because they don't care anymore, because they're like, you guys burned everything down. There's not going to be an environment. I'm never going to afford a home. I'm never going to do this. So I'm going to lead into my self-care, my wellness, my this, my that. And they're forcing the hand of the market to create like third spaces, which a third space is like a healthy space that you can go, that it could be a park. There's lots of like art things happening that don't include alcohol. Alcohol sales are plummeting.
Completely.
Nobody's consuming that anymore. So it's kind of like the market is shifting. And I think they're definitely a part of it, because they have now, by the people who either raised them or saw it, are saying, this isn't good for you. Don't do this. We need to fight for this. The Al Gores of the world finally like kind of showed up. Greta Thunberg, they are part of that. They want to be part of these movements, because they're also tired of the older generation's nonsense. I'm like, go, do, make it, break it, and do better. And I think if we want to support that we have to, as much as possible, specifically ones who are trying to start businesses, because there are kids now who are not going to college, which is totally okay if that's not their path. Please, or to you. But how do we educate them? How do we create services for them so that they don't fall privy to predators of like lending and take over their business, or young women who want to start businesses, and there's older men who are trying to say, I'll give you the world, but you have to give me this in return. Like, all of these things need mentorship. And I think that's kind of now, I'm coming to this conclusion on this conversation. I think we have a role of becoming like the tias for these people. Like the tias academy.
Absolutely.
There's the elders were like, this is the tias. Like, don't do this.
To
Do it this
work
way.
together. I think it's to do this value exchange of that energy that they're bringing into, hey, we need to fix what you've left us with, but at the same time, let's take the wisdom of what we have gone through as well, right? Like I think that intergenerational exchange, I think, is so important. And again, I know that for marketing and for many purposes, it's good to know about Gen Zs and millennials and all of that. But at the end of the day, we're all in the same time and space together, and we need to, I guess, unite for this, which is on the topic of isolation. And I think isolation is such a big point. Loneliness is such a big point, and such a growing trend all over the place, which brings more to the point that we need to build community as much as possible and thrive. And it's not easy. It's not easy to do that, and it's not easy to find community. I think technology is great. I love technology. I love businesses built around technology, but at the same time, I'm very cautious of it and how divisive it can be. And as much as people are not drinking, at the same time, there's growth in terms of video games and just people being completely addicted to their screens and stuff like that. So I think that the key word for these is, community at all costs, and protecting it and building it at all costs.
I love that. That's so true. Because that's the solution I give to anyone. If they're like either sad, depressed, I'm like, go volunteer. Get out of your house. Go do something. Go meet a friend outside at a restaurant. That's local. Don't just order in. Be outside. Do things. Support. And I'm a big advocate. And I think this is another thing that you can do aside from just an entrepreneurship perspective as a consumer. Because I try to be a conscious consumer as much as I can. I focus on trying to support local restaurants and local like markets and things like that when I can. For sure. Local businesses, because they're the ones that are part of the good fight that we're trying to keep to keep our community lives.
Yeah. And I think that also on the topic of generations, for us to go to our closing, I think that although this conversation is amazing, we could stay here in it forever. I think it's important sometimes to realize that, unfortunately, although you want to make a change, you're still subjected to the system where things were created in a way. And you're going to isolate yourself from those systems, and you can do that. It's up to you. But if you really want to change it, you're going to have to get in it. And then you're going to have to find a way to change it from within. I think millennials, we really tried doing it. And I think we were not as good as we wanted. We did change a lot, I would say, especially women and women of color specifically, I would say, changed so many systems in so many ways. And I hope that now that we have a little bit more voice and a little bit more presence, we can give space for those that are coming and are even bolder than we were, because we had to step into those shoes and to those boxes sometimes and fit ourselves to make the space. And then now we're able to open. But I hope that we can make the bigger space for them to come and just like change it from within. Otherwise, it's always going to be them versus us. The system working towards it and them trying to break it, like how can we merge those things, and how can we make space so people can change it from within, like new generations and new people coming.
I agree completely.
And Hil, you have a story to tell us. You have climbed many mountains in your life. And one of those mountains is Mount Kilimanjaro. I remember when I met you, I think you were preparing for that. And first of all, why Mount Kilimanjaro, which is absolutely amazing? And was there a moment at the peak of this experience where this process shifted how you lead or how you see work, especially purpose-driven work?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, actually. So I did do that. I forget. These are the moments I'm like, I did do that.
Yeah, you did.
It's amazing. I would do it again in a heartbeat. And I think anyone, if they have capacity to do that and enjoy hiking, it's a wonderful mountain to go experience. I did it because honestly, it's one of the easier mountains to climb that you don't need as much training. That's the easiest freestanding one. You have a porter team that helps you. So not much mountain climbing gear needed and everything. The opportunity was there. It's also a passion from when I was like 18 years old. I always wanted to do something like that because it felt so far off. Like, who's this little Dominican girl from Yonkers going to be climbing a mountain? Like, why? Yeah. But we got there, which is beautiful. And I think the biggest lesson, so when you're climbing the mountain, the Tanzanian guides put the slower person in front. And I was one of the slow people. Why? Because they keep the pace of the people behind us. Because then if not, you leave everyone behind. People are just going to climb up the mountain and they're left behind. So they literally, Ohana means family. I just watched Lilo and Stitch. They don't leave anyone behind. So it's kind of like that same thought process of like, how do you uplift the people who are going slower? And you can do that, metaphorically, of like elderly generations, then putting the people who are there and the fastest people in the back and leading the way, right? And they would have this phrase kind of saying pole pole, which means slowly, slowly, like literally go slow. And I think that's the best way of how you can build a company. Yes, we should move fast and break certain systems. I'm all about that. Would love to break racism yesterday, but slowly, slowly, how do we build on top of that growth to get to the top of the mountain to then see the change that really needs to happen? And I think Leti was saying that in the best way of kind of like, how do we teach these people? We kind of started walking. We're breaking in these hiking shoes, and now these kids can put on the hiking shoes like, this is a breeze, and we'll just go up the mountain, get over this hurdle much faster. And I think that's just like that's human nature. It's human nature. We all talk about our generational curses and everything that we have to overcome. But if we can leave the world, leave our communities, and do it slowly, consciously, taking a step back before buying something just because it looks shiny and then deciding to buy secondhand instead, right? Like thrifting, all of these different things, slower consumption of things, slowing down. I think in Europe, they do this beautifully. I would love for us to do this. I want all of August to be off, but you slow down, force yourself to slow down and give back, and even slowing down during the day to be with family. I think it's necessary, and you should definitely combine it into your entrepreneurial journey, because if not, you're going to burn out. And for what? At the end of the day, there's like, I remember reading something. It's like you work hard for all of this money so that one day you can sit down with your husband or wife enjoying your slow moment, even though you're building a company and you're in that slow moment right now.
Yeah.
So
I love this. Yeah. So cheers to slow moments. Absolutely. Yeah. And slowing down the pace. Absolutely.
I think I take a lot of time to two things that I like to do. One of them is if I took a picture right now and looked at this picture a year ago, what would my past self think about it? Without context, without anything, what would my past self think about this moment? And would we appreciate what we're having right now and look forward to it? Because sometimes we're not able to appreciate what we have. And the other thing is just like stopping sometimes when you're doing something amazing and thinking like, some people work their whole lives to get to this moment, and I am working through it and I'm still getting to enjoy it. So why am I rushing and why am I thinking about it? Well, I have the space and the time to just relax and just be with myself and just like, this is it. There's no what we have tomorrow, whatever it is just a concept, and it's like something that's completely a construct. So the important thing is for us to think about it right now, right? I think the picture thing is always something that I try to think about, because we don't celebrate small moments, right?
I agree. I think I'm gonna use that technique in my mindfulness practice, because I love that type of perspective.
Yeah, just one question here. What is if I were to ask you to close down on our conversation into creating what matters? And I think creating what matters is a lot about asking questions. Right now, we're at the Impact Beyond Profit chapter for sure, but we've touched on many different aspects of life, of community, of family, of business. I think here we talk about the human is only one thing. It's a values-driven life that is, you understand who you are, what you want to create and put out into the world, and then you go and create that. But that path is often met with many different questions and with the capacity to question the things that are put in front of you. So at this very moment in time, if I were to ask you, what question are you personally sitting with right now as a leader, as a woman, or just as Hilda for creating what matters? What would that question be?
That's a good one. I think it's funny, it kind of goes to, it's being okay in the slowdown. Because I catch myself often too, like I should be growing faster in the business, personally, relationally, like all of these different things. I'm reading this wonderful book called Slow Burn, which is actually my pastor for my church released it. And it's just being comfortable in the wait, because I know that I'm going to be successful. I don't know and successful to me of what that looks like, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm healthy. Everyone around me is healthy. I'm financially abundant and capable to do the things that I want to do. And that's it. Like, I don't really need much more. And I have that right now. And when I sit that in the gratitude, I have those moments. I'm like, oh, it's right near. I do want to have my wellness center. I do want to build multiple businesses. I want to be an angel investor. I want all these things. But in the wait, and how do you wait is the big one. So my question is, how am I waiting for these seasons to come in that process? And I love having that kind of thought process of like, how do I wait? I can wait angry. I could wait anxious. I can wait upset. I can wait all of the negative things, or I can wait in joy. I can wait in community. I can wait,
I love that.
filling my cup with beautiful food and people around me while my, future husband comes in, while my family that I want comes in, while that check comes in that's going to help me expand my company to international locations, like all of those things. But in that process is how are you waiting and what are the decisions you're making at the same time? So I think that's what I'm sitting with right now.
It's a beautiful question. Thank you for
Me
sharing.
encanta. Hilda,
Yes.
thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for coming and spending your time with us. It has been very precious, and I hope that you fly as high as you want, in the pace that you want, with the direction and with the, how do you call it when you have a bunch of birds? What's a bunch of words in English?
Bunch of birds, a flock.
Yeah, a flock, with your flock and your community around you, and that the wind is helping you and pushing you away, because you're just this beautiful human being, and I'm so glad that I got to meet you. Yeah,
Thank you very much. So kind of you. Likewise.
Thank you, Hilda, so much. And thank you for showing us a side of you as a human, which is actually the normal thing. You're always showing up as a human with values, and especially for sharing what the journey has been. If you had to leave one learning for our community and our audience, something that you would like to share with them, or women that are wanting to build something for impact or for profit, what would that be? What would that learning be so they can take away something today?
2 things come up is just start. Try. If you have the capacity to just take that, like all your basic needs are met. A lot of people are trying to start companies when they already have a 9 to 5, all of these things, but I have this thing of like, if I feel it in my heart, I'm talking like these conversations invigorate me. After this, I might run around the house because I get so excited about the things that I talk about. Find your run around the house moment. And if you're feeling them, like, that's probably the Holy Spirit intuition is telling you like, this is what you need to do. This is the idea that's been sitting with you. This is the book that you've been wanting to write. These are the communities you want to help. Just start somehow. Doesn't mean you have to open your LLC, but go volunteer for somebody. Find an advisor, do a mentorship, understand that space before getting into it. Just start and do something, because sitting on an idea is helping nobody. You can help so much more by just being proactive and taking action. And I think the other thing is finding the right community, finding the people who are going to speak life to you, who are going to lift you up, who are going to support you, because there is going to be a lot of people are saying, you're crazy for doing this. You're not going to survive. Just go get married to a rich husband. Why are you doing this? All of these things when you're just like, or I'm going to move to another country and I'm going to start a whole other business. And I'm talking about you guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
my own rich husband, and that's
I'm going to be my own rich husband. Exactly. So
I'm the CEO. I wanted to marry you, right?
Exactly. That's the phrase. But find the partnerships that you have, because I think that's huge to me. If I've learned anything, both in professional and personal, it's having the right people around you. Because once you have that wrong person that's dragging you down, you're never going to fly. You're never going to be in that space. So find the right people, and they're out there.
Yeah.
Find your crew.
Find your crew.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thank you so much. That was Hilda Perez today. Familia, thank you for being with us in one more chapter. And make sure you subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, or Apple Podcasts to listen to more beautiful conversations. We love having you today. And we'll see you the next time. Thank you, Hilda. Thank you, Letty. And keep creating what matters. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.